So there's some fuckery afoot in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. This was a document published by the Office of the Inspector General, Joanne M. Chady. More like Joanne M. Chuddy, am I right? Fucking care provider facilities describe challenges addressing mental health needs of children in HHS custody. Alright, so let's hear straight from the chud's mouth what the fucking deal is here. According to those who treat them, many children enter the facilities after fleeing violence and experiencing direct threats to their safety during their journey to the United States. Some children also experience the trauma of being unexpectedly separated from their parents as a result of U.S. immigration policies. Facilities must promptly address children's mental health needs, not only to stabilize each child in crisis, but also to reduce the risk that the child will negatively influence or harm others. So it's like, hey, little Bobby, we just took your parents away from you, and now you're all alone in a scary cage with other crying children. Let's analyze how this has negatively impacted your mental health. It's like, duh, are you from the planet Mars? Do you not understand that when you take a kid away from its parents and stick them in a cage with a bunch of other crying kids, that kid's mind is gonna get a little bit fucked up? Duh, you fucking idiots. Jesus Christ, these fucking sadists that run these camps, they are like so surprised at like the most basic of human reactions. Who would have ever suspected that some of these kids would get traumatized from being unexpectedly separated from their parents? Who would have guessed? Fucking Jesus Christ. In fiscal year 2018, the UAC program received appropriations of $1.6 billion and more like imprisoned. Like, did the Nazi party fucking care for the Jews when they put them in the concentration camps? You fucking Nazi pigs. So in 2018 fiscal year, they cared for at least 49,000 children. About 12,400 children were in the UAC program at the time of our review. Holy shit! We have almost 50,000 fucking kids in custody, in cages. This is some sick shit, dudes. This is, without a doubt, a violation of human rights. Anybody who upholds this policy is a fucking Nazi scum and should be sent to the gulag immediately. Immediately. So let's see straight from the fucking chud's mouth what these kids are actually facing. This is the findings. It says, intense trauma was common among children who entered care provider facilities. Intense trauma. Facility managers and mental health clinicians reported that many children who entered facilities in 2018 had experienced intense trauma from a variety of events before and upon their arrival in the United States. I wonder if one of those traumatic events happened to be seeing their parents get pulled apart from them and deported somewhere, and then you being put in the cage with a bunch of other crying children. I'm sure that's part of the intense trauma. It's a fucking horror show. In their countries of origin, according to mental health clinicians and program directors, some children had experienced physical or sexual abuse and other forms of violence while in their country of origin. Staff in multiple facilities reported cases of children who had been kidnapped or raped, some by members of gangs or drug cartels. In one case, a medical coordinator reported that a girl had been held in captivity for months, during which time she was tortured, raped, and became pregnant. Other children have witnessed the rape or murder of family members or were fleeing threats against their own lives. In one case, a mental health clinician reported that After fleeing with his mother from an abusive father, the child witnessed the murder of his mother, grandmother, and uncle. Jesus. But yeah, let's just lock him up and put him in a cage with a bunch of other crying kids. And that'll certainly fix the problem. That'll make him feel better. Fuck, Jesus Christ. It's sickening, the world that we live in. It says, on their journey to the United States, according to mental health clinicians and program directors, some children experience or witness violence during the trip to the U.S. border. For example, mental health clinician in one facility shared the story of a child who, while attempting to cross from Guatemala to Mexico, was abducted by a gang and held for ransom. The gang held the child in a compound where another individual was shot in the head. Later, a woman who helped the child escape from the compound was shot by the gang. But here's the real meat and potatoes here. Once in the United States, according to mental health clinicians and program directors, some children experience additional trauma after they arrived in the United States. Some children faced additional trauma when they were unexpectedly separated from the parent. Even for children who entered the United States without their parents, those not separated, some found it traumatic to adapt to new and unfamiliar situations in facilities. As one mental health clinician explained, adapting was difficult because children, quote, lose friends, staff, the routine, and they have to move somewhere else. It's just one more loss. Mental health clinicians reported concerns about their ability to address children's significant trauma. Given the level of intense trauma that children had experienced before coming to HHS care, mental health clinicians expressed concerns that they were not able to address the children's mental health issues. In part, these concerns derived from the fact that mental health clinicians did not know how long a child would be in their facility. Many children had a relatively short stay in the facility from a treatment perspective, and the amount of time was often unpredictable. Given this uncertainty, mental health clinicians reported being wary of having children revisit traumatic incidents that they may not be able to address adequately through continued therapy. For example, mental health clinicians described intentionally not probing into past events, but instead staying focused on helping the children to cope and remain stable. Mental health clinicians refer to this as a band-aid approach, akin to psychological first aid. The goal is not to treat the children's underlying issues because children will not be in the facility long enough to make meaningful progress. Mental health clinicians express concerns about feeling unprepared to handle the level of trauma that some children presented despite their prior training and experience. As detailed in a separate report, OIG found that virtually all mental health clinicians whose records we reviewed met established educational requirements. Further, all facilities reported that they provided training for the staff, including mental health clinicians, to help them work with children who had experienced trauma. Nonetheless, mental health clinicians discussed how challenging it was to hear about children's traumatic experience, which sometimes caused the clinicians to become overwhelmed or suffer their own mental distress. These are dungeons of misery, ladies and gentlemen. When the shrinks require their own shrinks after hearing the scarring shit that they have to hear from these poor kids, subjecting them to additional distress, they have to go get their own shrinks. That's fucking... You know that this place is fucked up. You know that this place is fucked up when the when the mental health clinicians have to get their own mental help. Further, mental health clinicians said that colleagues hired without previous experience in caring for children in ORR custody may have been especially unprepared for the severe trauma of the children in their care. Both program directors and mental health clinicians expressed that more training on trauma-informed care could be beneficial. Care provider facilities reported that separation from parents and a hectic reunification process added to the trauma that children had already experienced and put tremendous pressure on facility staff. Oh, well, poor you. Poor facility staff. I feel so fucking sorry for you. Is that added pressure? You know, you take these kids, you separate them from their parents, and then all of a sudden you have pressure to find that kid's parents again. Poor fucking babies. Cry me a motherfucking river. This is like the Nazis complaining that all of these Jews coming in through the trains, there are too many of them. It is hard and difficult to count all of them. It's the exact same fucking thing happening here. If you work at one of these facilities, you should be fucking ashamed. You should be depressed. Alright? You should feel ashamed of yourself. I don't give a fuck if you think you're helping these kids. You're participating in a system that's keeping these kids in cages. Separated children exhibited more fear, feelings of abandonment, and post-traumatic stress than did the children who were not separated. Separated children experience heightened feelings of anxiety and loss as a result of their unexpected separation from their parents after their arrival to the US. For example, some separated children expressed acute grief that caused them to cry inconsolably. Children who did not understand why they were separated from their parents suffered elevated levels of mental distress. For example, program directors and mental health clinicians reported that children who believed their parents had abandoned them were angry and confused. So you've got some kids who are too young to know what the fuck is going on, and they think mommy and daddy abandoned me. This is disgusting. How young are these kids? Like 4? Like, I'm trying to think back to when I was a 5-year-old kid, and if some fucking pig separated me from my parents, how confused and scared I would be if I was put in a cage surrounded by other kids who were also crying and confused and scared. Some of those kids were saying, mommy and daddy abandoned me. Other of those kids were saying, I don't know what happened to my mommy and daddy. Another kid's just crying inconsolably. I mean, I would fucking fall apart. I would have some fucking issues. More issues than I already have. That's for sure. If that had happened to me when I was a little baby boy. Other children expressed feelings of fear or guilt and became concerned for their parents' welfare. Yeah, I would be concerned too. If they get deported back to Honduras, where like a cartel or a gang threaten their life, chances are that gang's gonna fucking find them and do something bad to them. Immigration enforcement sending these people back to their home countries have literally given them a death sentence. The difficulties that some facilities had in locating parents in detention and scheduling phone calls also contributed to children's anxiety and fear for their parents' well-being. The level of trauma and unique experiences of separated children made it more difficult to establish therapeutic relationships through which facilities could address the children's mental health needs. Yeah, it's because they don't want to talk to you, you fucking creeps. They don't want to talk to the people that did this to them. It says the level of trauma and unique experience, blah blah blah. Program directors and mental health clinicians describing challenges gaining the trust of separated children. Yeah, like, you did this to them. And now you're trying to win them over with candy or something? What do? You put Peppa Pig on TV and you talk to the kid about Peppa Pig to get them fucking disarmed, and then you give them some candy and you're like, oh yeah, now we can talk about your mental health. Fucking assholes. These guys are the biggest fucking torturer trolls in the world. How dare you? How dare you fucking traumatize these children and then complain about the challenges of gaining their trust? It's because you fucking traumatize them, you sadistic motherfuckers. Holy shit. For example, one program director noted that separated children could not distinguish facility staff from the immigration agents who separated them from their parents. It's because all pigs are the fucking same. Alright? Whether it's a pink pig or a spotted black pig, it's the pigs, they're the same. Alright? Pigs are the same. Alright? You're all fucking pig, Nazi, fascist scum. And you should be fucking embarrassed. You should be embarrassed to be a human being. You do this to kids, and then you're like, oh, well, we're not like those evil ICE agents. We're just other immigration agents. You work for the same fucking organization. You're part of the same system. Say, quote, every single separated kid has been terrified. We're seen as the enemy. Yeah. I wonder why. Let's put on our thinking caps and think about why that might be for a second. Surely it's not because you're keeping them in cages and you took them away from their parents. Surely not. I wonder what the reason for that is. It's like, we're not the bad guy, kid. We just took you away from your parents and are keeping you here as a prisoner. But we're not the bad guys. Fucking assholes. Program directors and mental health clinicians also noted that some separated children isolated themselves and took longer to adjust to the facility and its routines, refusing to eat or participate in activities. Adding to the challenge of addressing the mental health needs of separated children was the uncertainty that came with a hectic reunification process for children covered by the Mrs. L versus ICE lawsuit. This lawsuit established a different reunification process for Mrs. L class members and their separated children, along with fixed court-imposed deadlines for family reunification. Program directors reported that the guidance that ORR provided to facilities in 2018 on how to carry out reunifications for children covered by the Mrs. L case changed frequently and with little notice. Changing guidance resulted in uncertainty for how or when reunification would happen. For example, case managers and facilities were not always able to let children know when or even if they would be reunified with their parents, or whether that reunification would happen in the United States. This type of uncertainty added to the distress and mental health needs of separated children. Even when they were prepared to reunify separated children covered by the Mrs. L case with their parents, facilities reported that logistical issues introduced further uncertainty that could lead to emotional distress. Facilities reported that some reunifications were scheduled with little advance notice or suddenly canceled or delayed. Jesus Christ, what a bunch of assholes! Imagine being a kid in one of these fucking camps. You don't think you're ever going to see your parents again, and then they say, oh yeah, you're going to see your parents again, they're coming to get you today, and then all of a sudden, just kidding kid, we canceled on you, haha, fuck you. Yeah. That's going to increase the level of uncertainty and anxiety in anybody. It said it increased the levels of uncertainty and anxiety in separated children and other children in the facility. Yeah, because the other kids see that happen and they start to think the same thing. They start to think like, well shit, what if I won't be able to see my parents again? In one case, a child was moved from a facility in Florida to a facility in Texas to be reunited with her father. However, a mental health clinician reported that after the child made several trips to the detention center, she was returned to the Florida facility in shambles without having ever seen her father. These fuckers told this young girl, you're gonna meet your dad, he's gonna come get you. Just kidding, haha. Fuck you. Go back to the Florida facility. So this is from the program director. He says a 7 or 8 year old boy was separated from his father without any explanation as to why the separation occurred. The child was under the delusion that his father had been killed and believed he would also be killed. This child ultimately required emergency psychiatric care to address his mental health distress. Because the kids, a 7 or 8 year old child doesn't understand. And they're going to think that my daddy's been taken away to get killed. I'm next. A medical director said, physical symptoms felt by separated children are the manifestations of their psychological pain. You get a lot of, my chest hurts, even though everything is fine medically. Children describe symptoms, every heartbeat hurts, I can't feel my heart, of emotional pain. You know what that is? It's fucking panic attacks. Alright, you get the feeling, the tightness in your chest. You get the feeling like your heart's about to fucking explode because it's beating so fast. That's a fucking panic attack. Alright? You don't need a fucking medical director to tell me that. These kids are panicking. Their anxiety is out of control. They're sitting in these places. They're like, I want to fucking get out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. I want my mom. I want my dad. But I can't. There's nothing I can do. I'm in a fucking cage. Sure, they put Peppa Pig on the TV, and sure, they give us some coloring books to draw so I can draw pictures of how fucking miserable I am. And every now and then, some doctor comes and gives me some candy and tries to get me to open up and talk about my mental health. Fucking Jesus Christ. Faced with a sudden and dramatic increase in young children, staff reported feeling challenged to care for children who presented different needs from the teenagers they typically served. Facilities noted that elementary school-aged children had shorter attention spans, lacked the ability to comprehend the role of the facility, and more commonly exhibited defiance and other negative behaviors. Facilities noted the difficulties associated with completing assessments and other screenings for preschool-aged and younger children who could not accurately communicate their background information, needs, or sources of any distress. This is Exhibit 2. The number of young children referred to ORR increased sharply in May 2018 when DHS formally adopted the zero tolerance policy. Program director said, "The little ones don't know how to express what they're feeling, what has happened. Communication is limited and difficult. They need more attention." Facilities reported that children with longer stays exhibited more stress, anxiety, and behavioral issues which staff had to manage. Some children who did not initially exhibit mental health or behavioral issues began reacting negatively as their stays grew longer. Well, gee, I wonder why. For example, one mental health clinician explained that even children who were outgoing and personable started getting more frustrated and concerned about their cases around the 70th day in care. Talk about like the worst fucking vacation of all time. 70 days in an ICE facility. That sounds fucking horrible. According to facility staff, longer stays resulted in higher level of defiance, hopelessness, and frustration among children, along with more instances of self-harm and suicidal ideation. You have these kids, they're so fucking desperate, they want to fucking kill themselves so that they can escape. One mental health clinician, for example, remarked even children who come into care with good coping skills become disillusioned after a lengthy stay. Facilities also reported that children who had arrived in the United States on their own felt a sense of frustration in the summer of 2018 as they witnessed the expedited reunification of separated children while seeing little movement in their own cases. Facilities attributed longer stays to children to ORR's new sponsor screening requirements. As mentioned earlier, in June 2018, ORR revised its sponsor screening requirements and began mandating fingerprint-based FBI criminal history checks for all potential sponsors, including parents and all adult members of their household. That was just happening in June 2018. Like, before that, we don't know where these fucking kids were being sent. We don't know if they were being sent to fucking Buffalo Bill so that they can go live in his fucking crawl space. And you honestly expect me to believe these criminal history checks for potential sponsors are really, like, on the up and up? They're not cutting corners? They're not just saying, fuck it, I don't give a shit about these kids, these undocumented kids, let's send them out with whoever. Further, these fingerprints were shared with ICE and could be used for immigration enforcement purposes. Facilities reported it became more difficult to identify sponsors willing to accept children after new fingerprinting requirements were implemented, which delayed placing children with sponsors, adding further stress and uncertainty. But see, this isn't even to reunify them with their parents. This is just to put them with a fucking foster parent in our broken-ass foster care system. The lead mental health clinician said the most challenging thing is the lack of time due to the caseloads. Our concern is always whether the quantity whether the quality of therapy suffers. Some children have behavioral issues and are going through difficult times, and you need to see them more during a given period. It becomes a strain on us. Once again, I say poor babies. Poor fucking babies. Ooh, boo-hoo. You don't get to psychologically probe every single kid that comes into your system. Maybe it's because there's fucking 12,000 kids in your system during the time this report was made. I think you might have a little bit too many kids. One child in this in these cages is one too many. 12,000 in these cages is fucking absurd and obscene. The program director said, as the population in the area grows, the existing providers get more saturated with work, so it becomes more difficult to get appointments. We need more psychiatrists, neurodevelopmental psychiatrists, and psychologists. No, here's what you really need. You need less. You need less of everything. You need to be defunded. Alright, you need to be closed the fuck down. These kids need to be reunited with their parents. Alright, these kids need to be treated like human fucking beings and not like cattle. You fucking Nazi pigs. The lead mental health clinician said the facility tries to keep them safe, but there are many ways a child can harm themselves. The children need a secure residential treatment center for children who are at high risk and need intensive therapy. I mean, Jesus Christ. This just keeps getting worse and worse. The program director said the staff in a shelter facility end up brainstorming on how to provide mental health services to kids, but that's not what the facility is designed for. It's a temporary shelter, not a treatment facility. There's also an issue where residential treatment facilities won't take minors who are aggressive, even when those minors are aggressive because they have untreated mental trauma. So every single step of the way, we see the system's fucking broken. How much money and how many billions of dollars in funding did they get from the government? In fiscal year 2018, the UAC program received appropriations of $1.6 billion, and you can't give these kids a decent place to stay while you fuck them in the ass and kidnap them? $1.6 billion thrown at this shit. For what? For more cages? You obviously don't give a shit about these fucking 49,100 children you had in your custody during 2018. You obviously don't give a shit about them. Because I'm sure at least a sizable chunk of that 1.6 billion should have gone in to making sure these kids at least received human needs. Alright, food, water, healthcare, shelter, access to mental health services. But of course, what they really need is to be reunited with their parents and let them go. Let them go. Let them be free, you sick bastards, you Nazi fucks. Anybody who supports this system, anybody who supports these kids in cages, I don't give a fuck if you're a psychiatrist and you apparently have these kids' best interest at heart. Fuck you. You're a Nazi. You're participating in a concentration camp system. I don't give a flying fuck if you think you're doing the good thing by these kids. Oh yeah, I wanna give you the best mental health services possible while I kidnap you and keep you in a cage indefinitely. Yeah. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm not the bad guy. I'm your buddy. Tell me all about your mental health problems. Yeah, that's gotta be like the most uncomfortable therapy session of all time. This is a fucking disgrace. This makes me sick. I fucking hate this country. I hate America. Because this is what America is, ladies and gentlemen. Sickening. Absolutely sickening.